There it is. No? No? Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll give it a few minutes.
I'm looking forward to when we get to the books that don't have two titles on all of them.
Yeah, and it's just so we will get to the title actually later, but like
Okay.
it's like they didn't think people would know it was a sequel if it didn't have the same one of the same words in the title. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's such
I,
an odd
I
choice.
I don't understand. And like it's not a bad title, but yeah, it's like why would you change it from something that already worked?
Oh yeah. Okay. Shall we? Yeah. I don't know if we're expecting anyone to the live, so we may as well go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So hi everyone. A few people are planning to watch it back later. Do you want to start with introductions, Cara?
Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Kara. You obviously know my channel is Wild Book Garden, but Hana is actually hosting this one. Um, we're just hosting them all on my channel for ease of use. But yeah, big Frances Harding fan, obviously. And I'm really excited to talk about this sequel because this is one of the few books of hers that I've never read. So it was a real treat to read a book of hers and have no idea what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hi everyone. Hannah. I'm Hannah, and I'm also obviously a big Francis Harding fan, as we discussed last time. Um, and yeah, but this was also one of the ones I hadn't read before, so that was good fun discovering that. Before we go into the discussion, we'll just give the content warnings. So the ones I think we may discuss for this book are imprisonment, fire, and possibly family separation as well. I think those are the only ones, unless you have any others to add, Cara.
I think I saw your list on Goodreads and it looked like the same as mine. So I don't think we might talk about kidnapping, but
Possibly.
yeah, other than that, I think you've covered it.
Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned last time, this is the only one in the read along that we're reading out of publication order because it is a sequel to Fly By Night, which we read last month. Yeah, so we will go into discussion. Cara, do you want to give kind of overall thoughts? Did you like it? Star rating if you feel it's relevant.
Yeah. So I did enjoy it. I think I gave this one the same rating as I keep mixing up the different titles now. Fly by Night. I gave them both 4 stars, and I don't know which of the two I prefer because I like them for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One thing that was really funny is when you mentioned the like pantomime horse as a possible like logo thing, I was like, what are you talking about? Because I hadn't gotten that far. And now at the end, I'm like, oh, that's the horse. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I always love her writing. I am really pleasantly surprised by some of the characters that stood out to me in this book,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I'm sure we'll get to. And yeah, like the story was really interesting. Like a fascinating setting to be sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I also liked it. I also gave it 4 stars, which star ratings I feel like are slightly meaningless for your favorite author, but I did give it 4 stars. Um, I'm not, yeah, like you, I'm not sure if I like it better or not. While I was reading it, I was like, no, Fly By Night was better. But the more I think about it, the more I like this one. So I think this one's a one that improves on reflection.
Mhm.
So yeah, and again, I'm so impressed with her plotting. Um,
Yes.
yeah. And thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on it as a sequel? So I saw a couple of interviews where she said that she wanted it to be able to be read as a standalone,
Mm.
separate to Fly by Night. So thoughts on that? Do you think she was successful, and how do you think that impacted the story, or would have would you like to see anything different taken forward from the first book or anything like that?
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the things I was thinking about this book is that there's kind of a lot of setup at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's about 100 pages, I think, before we actually get to like the premise of the city of Toll. Um, so that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess it does kind of work as a standalone. I think it's one of those where you definitely would have like more investment in some of the characters. And like you'd probably have a lot stronger feelings about Mandelion, or I don't know how we're pronouncing that city name. But I think there's things where you'd be a lot more invested in the outcome if you've read the first book. But I do actually think it works pretty well as a standalone in terms of like introducing the characters in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. I didn't realize either until I started looking up, and then once I found it, I was like, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
'Cause- yeah, and because I don't know, there were threads in the first one that I thought or hoped would be picked up, like the one about the twin queens from the other one
Yeah.
we discussed last time, and it wasn't, and like that felt like the kind of thing you would pick up in a sequel, but like
Hmm.
if she didn't want to reference it, you can see why she didn't.
Yeah.
And thoughts on the title, which we were just discussing slightly. So obviously the original UK title is Twilight Robbery. I should have held the book up at the beginning actually.
Shut up
Um,
for a little.
yes. Um, and then they changed it to Flytrap for the US version. Um, thoughts? Which one do you prefer? Which one do you think suits the story better?
Um, I mean, just for ease of use, I kind of like Twilight Robbery better because I will continuously mix up the two titles because they both have fly in them. Um, I do like the play on words of Fly Trap because Mosca, like Goodman Palpitatle is like related to flies, and there's all these like lines about how like I don't know that connect her to that. So I like the play on words, but I just feel like a lot of times title changes are unnecessary. I think they just confuse people. So yeah, I don't know if I had like a coherent like conclusion there, but
Yeah,
like
no, I
I
didn't really have any specific thoughts on it either. I just thought it was interesting what they chose. And obviously Flytrap is like you said in your Goodreads review, that it sort of has more meanings once you've read the book as well.
yeah.
But I feel like Twilight Robbery is more whimsical. I don't know, it's kind of more mysterious maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Eowyn's Elixir is but I liked it better. Yeah. Do you want to share why you liked it better? I'm interested to know. As we said at the beginning, neither of us are sure. So,
Yeah. Help us decide.
but, I'm lost again with the StreamYard and the comments on the. It's okay.
I know. We're trying to like navigate how you direct somebody to we'll figure it out.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So, in to continue, still on like general non-spoilery thoughts. Thoughts on the setting of Toll and like the general idea of it.
I I thought it was a really interesting setting. It kind of felt like sort of a natural extension of some things in the first book. Like
Mm-hmm.
we get references to how people make judgments about you based on your name and like
Mm-hmm.
which of the beloved you like fell in the jurisdiction of. So it makes sense in this whimsical but twisted world that there would be a city that takes that to this extreme. Um, yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I feel like it was a really well characterized setting. Like it really felt like a very active part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one of those settings that almost feels like its own character. So I thought it was really well written, even if like obviously some of it was incredibly stressful and sad. Um, just like the implications of it. But I appreciate that she really thought through those implications. Like
Mm-hmm.
um it wasn't just like an interesting concept that like she never dealt with. Like, oh, how would this affect people's families, you know?
Yeah, definitely. But also, like, they were way more beloved than I thought. Like, in the first book, I thought there were, like, one for every day of the week, maybe, or something. But how do people in the world remember which beloved it is for this 3-hour stretch once a year?
I know. Yeah, or like I was picturing maybe like one a day, which would still be a lot, but is like I don't know, a more manageable number than however many. Like, how does a clock have figures of all of them? That's so many. Yeah.
I guess the clock only has figures of the good ones, so
Oh, that's a
that's
good
hard.
point. That's a good point. Only about
Still,
half as
though,
many.
that's still a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also liked the chapter titles, how they were all named after the beloveds. I thought that was
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, it felt like, I don't know, at points it felt like she'd come up with them and didn't have anywhere to put them in and had just put them as a
Yeah.
title.
I do like that, like, the chapters seem to, like, some of them more than others, but some, like, the chapters seem to have something to do with
Yeah.
something that happened in the chapter, or the chapter titles, I
Mhm.
should say. Like, sometimes it was really obvious, but then it was like, oh, like, good ladies in ash, knight of the glorious bluff, and like I love that. I love that, like, phrase. And I think that was the chapter where Mosca, like, gets her plan into motion for the end of the book. So I
Mhm.
like that they were like themed a little bit, but yeah, they were a fun element.
Mm. It was fun to guess a little bit, like what do you think is
Hmm.
going to happen in in this chapter?
Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I guess remembering as well that this came out obviously after she'd published a few other things, not directly after Fly By Night, so her style was more developed by then.
Yeah.
And yeah, and do we want to, while we're there, actually talk about the writing, generally or in comparison to Fly By Night?
Yeah. I had fewer quotes this time, like specific quotes,
Mm.
but there were a few like standouts for sure. Um, I think my feelings on the writing in this one are it was more about like the setting and kind of the general, I guess, like more like physical descriptions than like some of the ones we shared for the first book where it's like characterizing the town that Mosca is from, and like very like personification oriented, I guess. And I feel like this book was much more like things you can see and touch, which is not bad. It was just different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought the same. It was sort of less long descriptive passages, but the like where it was flowery, it was sort of metaphors with purpose,
Hmm. Yeah.
like describing something kind of more specific. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to say anything else on that, or shall we go into characters?
I'm ready for characters if
All
you are.
right, let's go. Let's start with obviously our main lady, Moscamai. Just general thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I continue to really like her. Yeah, it was really interesting seeing her in this book because I feel like she did a lot more things on her own, maybe.
Mm,
I mean, like she was definitely a very very active participant in the first book, but because of the way that she separated from the rest of the group, I feel like we got to see her like come up with ideas more when usually it's Eponymous Clent who does. So that was really interesting. But yeah, I continue to enjoy her. I really appreciate her like no nonsense attitude to, well, everything basically, but especially to um like doing the right thing or doing the easy thing. It's like she'll swear at you for it, but she'll always help you out. Like,
mhm. Yeah, I thought she felt she felt more grown up, but still so much like herself,
yeah.
and still so much like a child as well. Like the bit where she's jealous of Beamer Beth near the beginning, and I was like, yes, I would be jealous.
Yeah. It's like when she says like she irrationally felt like Beth had stolen her name. I'm like, yeah, I get that.
But yeah, no, like you say about her being on her own, I felt like she there were moments when she said things, and I was like, oh, that's something Clint would say, and like you can see him rubbing off on her,
I
and
love
the way
that.
that I love their relationship in this one.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, but also like so they have that, and but then she's still so alone because like towards the beginning, there's that moment where when Clint's in prison towards the beginning, and she says that like no one would notice if I disappeared because you'd just think I'd run off and no one else would know. And it's like,
I know. I just want someone to love her and take care of her. Yeah. I wonder too if like by the end of the book, I think that wouldn't happen. Like I don't think Clint would think she'd run off anymore.
mhm,
I hope, like because of everything they've been through and the fact that she did come back and he came back for her a couple times too. So it's like slowly
mhm.
I think they're getting to the point of like I don't trust you to run off every time I turn around. Maybe.
I feel like she masterminded it though. Um, do you think?
I mean, she like it was the locksmiths who did a lot of the actual like actions near the end, but like she's the one who kind of used the fire to
Yeah.
make everything else happen. So she kind of like you were saying, Hannah, she kind of did what Clint does, where
Mhm.
he lets other people do stuff and then he uses that in a way that gets him what he wants, but they think it's their idea.
Yeah. I feel like she sort of marshals everyone into the positions she needs them to be in, even if
Yeah.
she doesn't exactly do the actions herself. Um, and do we want to talk about Clint while we're here as well?
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted me to like pull up his comment, but I loved him too. He was actually one of the characters. Like he might be one of my favorites in this book. He like really surprised me with how much I liked him. Like I enjoyed him in the first book, but um, I don't know. Even though we saw less of him in this one, I feel like we got more variety from him. Um, yeah, I really liked him, and I really liked his and Mosca's friendship in this book, especially. Like I think it really, it really like is solidifying them as a team. Um, even though again they're having to work separately for a lot of the book.
Yeah. I think so. So we'll get into spoilers in a little bit, and then we can talk about the ending. Because I think we have things to say.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Lots to have to say.
Um, yeah. No, I like Clint. His and Mosca's relationship, the way he cares about her, but he's still he's still Clint as well. He's still so recognizably him, especially we'll get to the ending, but some of the things he does at the end,
Yeah.
like, yes, no, you haven't really changed.
Yeah.
Um, and then do we want to go into secondary characters? Do we want to do those in the spoilery section? I feel
Um,
like Beth will have to be in the spoilery section.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is there anyone else or anything else you want to say before we go into that? I guess we can talk about themes.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we go into spoilers. So yeah, I thought, I don't know, there were fewer themes or more subtle themes maybe
Hmm.
than Fly By Night, which I think is why I didn't like it until I started thinking about it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that really comes across to me as kind of like, I don't know, the theme you get from the whole premise is judging people by their names or judging them by
Mhm.
things they can't control. Um, which in a way felt not even heavy handed, but in a way it felt like more obvious than I'm used to her themes usually. But it kind of isn't because it affects the whole setting. So, of course, you're going to talk about it a lot. And I think the way that the characters talked about those ideas, it felt more subtle. Like it didn't feel like even though Mosca does talk to people about how unfair it is, it's not like we have this like long speech from her where it's like, and this is the point of the book, like
Mhm.
so yeah.
Yeah, that, and also the idea of sort of if everyone expects you to be a certain way, are you going to be that way?
Yes. Yeah. That was
A
one
bit nature versus nurture.
that was one I noticed a lot too.
Yeah, and then I think kind of power and privilege as well
Hmm.
was kind of a big one.
Yeah. And like well, this was more of like a minor one that came up in certain scenes, but like what people will sacrifice for their loved ones.
Hmm.
Like when it comes to a choice between like keeping somebody you care about or giving them a better life, I thought that was really heartbreaking and really well done. And I had like an inkling that was gonna come up before we had that like explicitly stated, and I was like, yep, that's how it would work in this city. So
Hmm. Yeah, and also I like the when Musk was thinking about how the Nightlings like sort of clean the streets and keep the city working, and the Daylighters don't notice.
yeah,
I thought that was very prescient or sort of telling.
yeah,
Um, should we go into spoilers? I don't think.
let's do it.
Okay, before we do characters, one of your Goodreads updates, you said that you had predictions, and I'm very curious about where you were in the book when you said that, and what they were, and whether they were right.
Yeah. So I think I'm pretty sure that was at the point where they were organizing Beamabeth's fake kidnapping.
Hmm.
And my prediction, I had a couple of predictions with mixed results. I thought maybe that she actually wanted to be abducted by Brant Appleton, which is kind of what happened, but I thought it was because she actually did want to marry him, which is like not exactly what happened. But the one I was right about, I thought Beamabeth was the luck. Like the whole time, I was surprised that it wasn't her. And then we meet Paragon, and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, it's weird that he's not in the book more. And then we get the reveal that Beamabeth is the luck, and I was like, nice job. Like, so that was one of the big ones. Is I was expecting her to be the luck of the city, although I didn't think it was necessarily because of like something that the midwife did. I just thought that she was like the secret luck that only a few people knew about, kind of thing, for the
Hmm.
safety of the city or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't predict Beaverbeth, but like it was definitely a person when they were saying it's maybe an object, maybe it's a cup.
Yeah,
No, no, you're all wrong.
that was what. Yeah, they kept saying that like maybe it's a cup I can put in my pocket. I'm like, or a human. Like,
Okay, so let's talk about Beaverbeth, arguably the main secondary character. Um, so you said you thought she was the luck. Did you suspect that she was also the villain?
I like wondered, but I didn't. It wasn't one of my like I don't know primary theories. Just because, not that it was obvious, but like I don't know. I feel like I've read like similar characters before where like the twist is that they're bad but they seem so sweet, and for whatever reason I didn't expect that to happen here necessarily. Like it did occur to me, but I didn't think it was likely, but I was obviously wrong.
Yeah. No, it was like because after the previous book, I was so
Yeah,
like, no, trust no one.
trust no one.
But I was so busy actually suspecting Mistress Leap that I
Me
never.
too. I was so nervous because I really liked her, and I'm like, you always like the bad guy. I was like, she maybe she's like double, like a double agent or two timing them or something.
Yeah. Sort of to be true. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Like even if you're slightly suspecting that there's something off about her, it's
Yeah,
you don't really see the whole of it coming.
yeah. Like the
Um,
reveal when Mosca figures out why Skello had a knife, and she like manipulated them into shooting him. I was like, oh my god. Like, I mean, I don't like Skello, but like, yikes.
yeah. And like general thoughts on Beaverbeth as a character.
I didn't. I didn't find her as fascinating as Lady Tamarind.
Mhm.
But she was interesting, and I mean she's a great example of a foil for Mosca because she has like all the appearance of being a good person, with none of the actions. um I also like, it was interesting to me because I kept thinking like one of the reasons I thought she was the luck is the way that everyone fawned over her in a way that almost seemed like magic a little bit.
Mhm.
um but I don't think it was. I don't know, I was a little confused. It's like, so maybe, I guess it would make more sense if it wasn't magic, because part of what the book is saying is that people give other people this power because of their expectations. But that was one thing I thought was interesting, is like I kept I don't know, I kept expecting there to be some kind of like charm, I guess, for her. But it was just her charm. It was just like her ability to manipulate people, which thematically I think makes a lot more sense for the book.
Yeah, and I also loved sort of Mosca. Every time she met someone who mentioned being with someone and they were sort of loved being with, she was like, "No, you too."
Yeah. I know, poor Mosca was just like so fed up. Like that was another thing that like made me wonder if it was some kind of like magical thing, because I'm like, so because Mosca's not from here, or she has like the dark version of Bima Beth's name, except that like Eponymous Clent was kind of like affected by Bima Beth as well, so I guess that wouldn't work. But
Yeah, I wondered about that too, but I feel like this world just doesn't, because some of Franz Hardinge's books obviously do have magic, but some of them are more like this one's not sort of so much in that vein. And Mistress Bessel, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I was surprised. Like I kind of, I don't know, I really didn't trust her at the beginning. But then like some of the things she was doing to help them, I'm like, okay, maybe you're one of those like true neutral characters where if your goals line up with the main characters, then you can like, you know, be an ally. Um I did not suspect the locksmith thing at all. Like I was very surprised by that. But it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I didn't suspect the locksmith, but I didn't consciously suspect that she was the spy, but I definitely thought that she was suspicious. But I also I loved the Clent's line just after she's been exposed about kind of that idea that, you give up morals to survive kind of thing, which whether or not you agree with it was an interesting thought.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so I've just got sort of list of Mistress Leap, Sir Felderol, The Luck, and Lalo. Any of them you want to go for first, or or any others you want to add?
Go ahead and choose. I have thoughts on all of them.
Okay, let's start with Mistress Leap.
I really liked her, and I am relieved she's not a villain. Like, I feel like she's such a like quintessential Frances Hardinge side character, and like, I mean, apart from you being concerned about her allegiances, she's like one of those like ordinary good people who's like doing the best she can, and like she's kind of one of those examples of how like an example Mosca really needed, of like sometimes people are looking out for you, or sometimes you can depend on other people, and I really like that about her. I just really enjoyed her as a character. She's very like practical, and no nonsense, but also like fairly hopeful, which I think is pretty amazing in her circumstances. Yeah, and every like the all of the things we find out about like how she helps women having children, and like um trying to ensure they're born under an auspicious beloved, is just like, it was very sad but very well written. And I think it really like, well, it's like we were talking about at the beginning. I think like that's an example of how Frances Hardinge didn't just come up with like, oh, this is a cool concept for a city. It's like, how would this affect people's lives and families and, like everything that they can like accomplish in the world, because that's the thing, is it's also really hard to get out of Toll. um which I thought that was another thing that I think felt very um similar to things in the real world, is like the way that poverty is used to like restrict people's access to any other options.
Yeah, no, definitely. I thought because she's not wholly. Well, I mean, she's a good character and she's helping all these women and she helps Mosca, but initially she takes Mosca and Clinton because they're going to give her money, or she thinks they're going
Yeah.
to. So
Yeah.
she's very, she's clear-eyed about, you know, the way the world works.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just the scene where they're all under the horse together.
Oh my god. Yeah. Just picturing the three clatter horses like fighting each other so badly. Like, it was hilarious.
Yeah, and it's described later on as like a come as a clatter horse party. It's like this. I love that.
That was one of my favorite lines. Yeah. It's so impressive. It's like you can go from like a really, really creepy scene, and then it's like people falling over themselves in a fake horse. Like, what?
Yeah, I thought that was sort of slightly off topic on Mistress Sleep, but I thought I liked that scene a lot in terms of the mystery, like because you could
Yes.
kind of guess who was under them, but you weren't completely sure, and it could have been different people, and trying to work that out. I thought that was a fun bit.
Yeah, and it was funny because probably like what happened with Mosca and Co. Every time a new one would show up, I'm like, that's the locksmiths, and then like they do something stupid, and then another one would show up, and I'm like, that's the locksmiths. Like, I didn't know until the end.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and as well the idea of taking the vegetable from the pawn shop, because when they come home with all the furniture and say we're going to take someone else's money, and Mr. Sleep says no at first, which so she's pragmatic but also has morals.
Yeah. And then
But
they're like, well, what if we steal from a pawn shop? And she's like, all right. Like,
yeah, and I liked her husband too, even though he wasn't a character. Just
the
in
poor
there,
man was so
the picture
stressed.
of their house, of their sort of furniture piled up everywhere, and
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, shall we go to Sir Feldrel?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I I had like really a hard time figuring out how I felt about him. Because at first it's like, oh, okay, he's trying to rescue Beth. Like he seems very sure he's gonna be able to marry her, but like whatever, he seems fine. But then like the more time you spend with him, it's like, oh, he just really wants to like squish Mendeleon. Like that's like all he's trying to do. So yeah, I do like that we find out he's actually like super competent at the end. I thought that was really interesting. Rather than just making him kind of what he appeared to be like, um, yeah, like he, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's like not powerless exactly, but um, like not a threat,
Less
I guess is
blustery,
what.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought he was, because I liked him at first when they're planning and they say, but how will we get out of the house? Turning the handle and pushing the door, obviously. I was like, yes, you tell.
Yeah, and I
Um,
like that he stuck up for Mosca too at the beginning. He
yeah,
wasn't happy about it, but he did.
yeah. But then he gets sort of more complicated. But yeah, and at the end, I thought, because there was a line at the end of when he sets the fires about how kind of he was intelligent but inexperienced.
Yeah.
So because when he tests the wind direction and you think you're like, okay, so he knows what he's doing, and then it all
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was really interesting too. Like he ended up being a much more complex character than
Mm,
I think he first appears.
and then he would have been in sort of a lot of other books. Sort of this I don't know the way Frances Hardinge draws her side characters
Hmm.
fully.
Yeah.
Um, if there's nothing else to say on him, we can go to the Luck or Paragon. He wasn't a huge character, but general thoughts.
I I thought he was so interesting, and I was expecting him to be a much bigger part of the book. Like
Yeah, it
after
was
we
too.
met him, I was like, oh, okay, so they're gonna try and get him out, or he's gonna escape somehow. Like he's gonna become like one of the gang. Um, yeah, I just like assumed he would be important.
Mhm.
And he obviously is very important at the end, but yeah, like I'm a little disappointed that he wasn't more of a character, just because like I would have liked to see him. um I don't know, like his backstory is so sad. um like his situation is so sad that I would have liked to see him get to do a little bit more.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I felt the same because I felt like the whole sort of thing around the luck could have been a book all of itself. Um,
Mhm.
although I did feel like I did mention before that this book was more tightly plotted than Fly by Night. Kind of, it had more of a central story arc.
Yeah.
But I sort of the luck felt slightly sideways of that. Um, but yeah, I felt so sorry for him in the scene where he just wants Mosca to stay and play chess with him.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Like I just he's such an interesting character to be in like two scenes, you know. Um Actually, like one thing, so you were talking about how this book is more tightly plotted, which I agree. I think there's like a much more like obvious central storyline, but this book felt a little longer to me than it needed to be, whereas I don't remember feeling like that with the first book. I
That's
don't know
true.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. I didn't feel longer when I was reading it, but I think it is longer.
I think so too. It's like almost 500 pages this edition.
Yeah, I think mine's over 500.
Yeah.
Yeah, 520, something like that, which is sort of quite hefty.
Yeah.
Yeah, into next year saying, yeah, definitely at the end, when he kind of really internalizes very quickly the power that he has.
Yeah. Yeah, and because you think it's, or I thought it was going to be, I was like, oh no, he's going to realize that no one cares about him. And instead, he like realizes that and skips right to, how can I use this to get everything I want, which I loved.
That's interesting. Um, do you want to elaborate on that? Sorry, I feel like a teacher, but
It's like, can you share with the class why you thought that way?
um, yeah, no, and I'm still lost about where the comments show up first. So
About the comments you said?
yeah, about where they show up first and where they
Yeah,
but it's fine. Um,
we'll figure it out. We'll get better at it.
yeah, and yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
interesting.
That's true. Like because when I finished this book, I don't know, about a week ago or something, and when I came to write down my like thoughts and discussion points, I'd forgotten the first 100 pages that they spend not in Toll. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I agree. They set up for Fly by Night was longer. It takes, but I think that's also linked to the fact that this one was more tightly plotted. Sort of Fly by Night, I feel like meanders a bit more before it gets to the.
Yeah. I wonder too how much of my feelings is that for Fly By Night, I didn't have a clear idea of what the central plot was. Like even on rereading it, I wasn't thinking about, all right, when do we get to the setup for the story? Like I feel like the setup for me was Mosca and Clint meeting and very, very reluctantly teaming up. Whereas with this one, because I knew it was going to be about Toll, I'm like, we're 100 pages in and we barely got to the city, you know? Like, so that might be more of like a book expectation thing than an actual like writing thing. Um,
Yeah, although actually, speaking of sort of plot meanders, and this is completely off topic, but the romantic facilitator, I
who
expected to be a
is that?
massive plot, and it wasn't.
I kept getting confused about who that was because like we have like all the letters that people sent, but like then Mosca sent like one that um like she was like deliberately like misleading people sending the letters. So like there were several points where I'm like, have we met the romantic
Yeah,
facilitator?
do
Like
we
is
ever
one of
get
them?
to know who it is?
I don't think so, but that like yeah, I thought that was going to be like an actual part of the story and I thought that we were going to actually meet them, but I don't think we did. Who did Clint meet with? because he was pretending to be the romantic
Yeah,
facilitator,
he
so
met
he
with
was meeting
Skello.
Skello, right? I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was weird, and I was just very confused because I kept thinking we had met them, and we didn't.
Yeah, because I'd completely forgotten about them until we get a letter from them right at the end. I was like, oh yeah, that was.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I also like the whole the pawnbrokers auction at the beginning. That also threw me off a little bit later on because I I guess I should have expected it to connect to the main story, but at first I didn't. So I'm like, why are they talking about the person who kidnapped Mosca? Like, what does that have to do with any of this? But it turns out he was like from Toll, and then like that led them to. I mean, he was obviously involved in the kidnapping, which was what they were actually trying to do when they said the whole romantic facilitator thing. But yeah,
Yeah, and well, speaking of the beginning bit, I love the bit where Saracen's terrorizing everyone.
I love
We haven't,
everything
we
Saracen
haven't talked about Saracen. I feel like he's less of a less central in this book, which I was disappointed about. But I love
Yeah.
that beginning bit where they think he's a ghost, and it's just
Yeah. I love how every time they get to a new place, like Mosca's like, "Don't keep my goose," and they're like, "Take him for the love of God! Like, take him away." Um, yeah, I like Saracen too.
yeah, and the bit where he swallows the emerald, that also
I knew it.
is
I
like,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
you think you don't know where it's gone.
yeah. I don't remember if I called it right when it happened, when it mentioned he had eaten some of the vegetables, but definitely by the end, when they're like, "I wonder what happened to the emerald," and like Saracen's standing right there, and I'm like, "I don't."
Yeah, but I also kind of love that they never found out.
Mm,
Like the reader knows, but the characters never found it. They didn't suddenly
yeah,
become rich by finding this emerald. I feel like that would have been sort of incongruous with the whole theme and the sort of general idea of the whole book.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say something else just now, and I've completely forgotten what it was. Oh, the bit where Saracen sees the world in Mosca, not Mosca.
I That was one of my favorite things, and I'm like, that's exactly like if you have pets who have like a favorite person, like that's exactly like how it feels. I love that. I totally believe that.
Okay, shall we talk about Lalo?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Um.
Yes. I feel like she drops hints about it sort of
Yes.
continually.
Yep. Um. I liked Lalo. I kind of had a similar. I guess several of the secondary characters. I was like, your backstory is so interesting that I feel like you would have been a bigger part of the book. Because she really wasn't in it that much. But I when she was getting all upset, I'm like, does she have a crush on Brand? And she did, and that's why she was doing everything. Yeah, I liked Lalo. Her whole like chocolate like smuggling
Smuggling, yeah.
business. And when she says like, well, like I was born under the beloved that leads other people into vice, so I figure chocolate is not as bad as other things I could do. Um, yeah, I guess I like her. I don't have as many thoughts on her as some of the other characters because I just didn't feel like um I didn't feel like she was in it as much.
Yeah, no, I said because I felt like she was sort of a relatively central character in terms of sort of importance to the plot,
Mhm.
but we don't learn as much about her as you might expect to.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I thought the bit where she's with Brandon, Brand's sort of mooning over Beamer Beth, and it was like, no.
Yeah. I do. I really am glad that he believed Mosca when she explained it to him. Like he wasn't just like, no, I can't believe anything imperfect about Beth. Like she's a flawless princess.
Mhm.
um, I liked Brand a lot, although I was a little. I don't know if I want to say frustrated with him because like he didn't have a lot of options the way their town was run. Um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Like I liked
Yeah,
him, but it's like make better
no, I
choices,
thought
Brand.
he was like what we were saying about how Sir Feldrol wasn't the kind of like all bluster and no substance. Brand was sort of like, oh, I want to be a radical, but I don't know what that means.
And then, yeah, but he's like, are you walking on the grass? And Mosca's like, between you and me, radicalism's all about walking on the grass. When he's like, can you teach me how to be a radical, like, and speak it? Like, it was very endearing in a way. It's like he just like, yeah, he's not a very good villain, and I like him for that.
Yeah, but I also think he was sort of interesting in that he was a privileged character, and then suddenly he wasn't anymore, and he doesn't know how to deal with that. And I think maybe that wasn't explored very much, but I do think it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, he's one of the ones who actually like his fortune changed like literally overnight. Yeah.
Thoughts on any of the other characters? I didn't have any others written down, but there's the mayor potentially, and just generally anyone else who you have thoughts about.
I'm trying to think if I had anyone else I had like strong feelings on. I was, which this makes a lot more sense knowing that she intended this to read as a standalone if necessary. I was kind of sad we didn't hear more about some of the characters in the first book. I was like, I was kind of hoping Captain Blythe would show up and, you know, like help defend either Mendelion or like the city, like help in some way. Um, like I get why those characters aren't, but I was like, I kind of miss them.
Yeah, but I did like when Mosca's thinking about them and kind of, remembering people that have been kind to her.
Hope would Pertellus.
Okay, and then shall we talk about the ending?
Yeah.
So there's obviously the sort of climax fire scene. There's the reveal about Beam of Birth, and then Mosca's conversation with Aramai Goshawk. So thoughts on any of those?
Yeah. I think like in a weird way the fire is like not the fire itself, but the reaction to it is one of my favorite scenes because I really liked how that was done and how at first it was like impossible that they could break the locks or they could, you know, tear down these walls. And then a few people started doing it. So they're like, it's possible, but we don't want to. And then by the end they were tearing everything down, you know, not just the places that were actually in danger. Like I thought that was a really cool scene and it kind of gives you this glimpse of like a lot of the daytime people, not that this makes them like great people, the bar is like really low, but it's like they at least don't want the nightlings to burn to death. Like that's nice. I thought that was like a good kind of like hopeful moment, and I also think it's interesting that it was a hopeful moment that came from what might be considered like violent or like radical like action, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I really liked that scene especially and how that kind of snowballed into like the rest of the town, um like not fully waking up to what was going on, but like a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, and sort of everyone kind of realizing that it doesn't matter what
Hmm.
anyone's name is, or not paying attention to anyone's names, and realizing that everyone deserves to be safe from a fire.
Yes. Yeah, and even when they're saying how like the first people that they save and how like the day people are surprised they don't have like sharp teeth and you know like they're like monsters basically, and how I thought that was like a good example of how much of this is like based in people's fear and based in like people's like what they've been told to expect from people who are different from them.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then, yeah, um, talk about the sort of the reveal about Beam of Birth and Paragon, and
Yeah. The luck thing I already mentioned, I was like, I knew it. I was suspicious the whole time. Um or almost the whole time. But I did not, kind of like we were saying earlier, like I had an inkling. I was like, Bima Beth could be involved some way, but I don't think I had gone so far as like, oh, she's the evil mastermind behind everything. um like that confrontation where like Mosca is like telling her she knows everything. I'm like, why, Mosca, why are you doing this? Like, tell
Yeah.
somebody first before
Yeah, and
you
then
like.
Clint immediately afterwards, like, what were you thinking? Why did you do that?
I feel like his reaction was like the better, or not better, but like more reasonable one. He's like, we have to leave like 20 minutes ago. What did you do? Um, yeah, I mean, it was a really good scene though. Like, especially like I mentioned, the part with where Mosca's figuring out the kidnapping, like the with Skello and everything. I was like, oh god. um, but yeah, I thought that was really well done, and I did not expect her. Like you mentioned the part where she goes to see Aramai. Um, I had no idea what her plan was going to be. So when she's like, "I'm here to talk to the head of the locksmiths," I'm like, "Oh no!" But she pulled it off, barely, like by the skin of her
Yeah.
teeth, as she does everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I really liked as well, so Clint had no idea that she'd gone, but he goes and asks her anyway, and then when Brad comes along with his, tells everyone about Beamer Beth, and Clint kind of, he doesn't know what Mosca's planning, but he trusts her enough to play off of it and kind
Yeah.
of take things from there. Yeah, and I thought the bit where Clint lets Beamer Beth, he tells the story of the child who was
Hmm.
a night name and lets Beamer Beth end it, end the
Yeah.
story, was really interesting.
Yeah. I thought that was really, really interesting too. Like he gave her the option, but he didn't actually make the choice for her. But he kind of did that thing where he makes somebody think they're the one making the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I love what you said about like Clint trusting Mosca, like to have some kind of plan, and he's like, "Well, I can do my bit, even if I don't know where this is going." I really like that, and I feel like that's a really good example of how, like, in this book, even though they're separate a lot of times, I feel like we get a lot more like of the dynamic between them. Like we
Mm-hmm.
see them relying on each other a lot more, and I really liked that.
Yeah, I liked as well when they're sending messages to each other through the musicians, and so he says something about Saracen to prove that it's
Yeah. The Winged War Zone. I Okay, that was one thing I thought I thought the musician thing was so smart. I really like that. I was like, that
yeah,
makes total sense. And like now you have a way to communicate, which is cool, obviously for plot reasons. But I was so sure the person leading Moscow away, I was like, oh my God, this is a locksmith. Like, I
yeah.
don't trust anyone. I'm like, everyone's a locksmith. Like,
Especially because it happens at the same time as
yes.
a someone's mail come in, and one of the locksmiths basically locks them up.
Yeah.
Um, so I
Yeah.
really like that middle bit where it's sort of two stories happening in alternating paragraphs. I thought that was really effective.
Yeah. I was so sure. I think up until the book outright told us that he was a musician, or he, like, it might have been when Mosca realizes what he said about rehearsal or something, I don't know, but like I was sure that that was a locksmith, like, um up until that point. How did you feel about, like, I'm just curious, how did you feel about like the locksmiths being the bad guys again?
I thought I wasn't expecting it,
Hmm.
and I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting through line considering sort of how much else was not deliberately not referenced from the previous book.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess at the same time, it made sense for this world because we already knew that the locksmiths have taken over other cities. Um,
Hmm.
so I thought it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, that realization where Mosca and Clint realize that they're in a locksmith city. Like they've always heard of like these cities that just like the people disappear and no one ever hears from the city again. I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I thought that part was really good. I think maybe this is just maybe this is partly because I've read the first book twice now, and so I have more of an attachment to some of the characters. But I feel like even though it really made sense for the story, and they were obviously formidable opponents, like I think as an antagonist they worked really well. I didn't find it quite as interesting. Um, Maybe partly because we had already sort of done this, but I don't know. Like I guess I got like a little tired of, oh, the locksmiths can get in anywhere. Everybody's a locksmith. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, it makes sense though, because like the whole atmosphere of fear in this town is because they could be anyone. So, I don't even know why I'm like complaining about it, but that was one thing I was like, I was hoping maybe that it wouldn't all come back to the locksmiths.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I guess, and we had Beam of Death.
That's true. That's true. We did have Beamabeth. She was just out for
Um,
herself.
yeah. And while we're on the locksmiths, how did you feel about Mosca and Gotork's final conversation on the bridge?
Yeah, I'm worried for her. Although, I mean, the fact that they're hoping to recruit her is like, well, they probably won't kill her yet. Like, um, yeah, like I can't picture Mosca even being tempted to join them is the thing. So it's like I mean, it was a very effective note I think to leave the story on. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is an example of how, like, yeah, they're great at planning, but they can't always predict people or read people. Because, like, Mosca would never join them, I don't think, like, in a million years.
Yeah. No, exactly. Um, but I thought sort of the coded conversation they had was very interesting about like, come find me on my next birthday. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Do we have any more thoughts, or shall we go into quotes?
I can't think of any other specific things I was gonna mention. So I'm ready for quotes if you are.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so one, I realized I marked more of the funny ones in this book rather than like really interesting, like we were talking about in the first book, like personification and descriptions and stuff. Um, One of my favorites was, however many centuries that ancient tree had stood there, it had probably never seen anything as graceless as Mosca and Clint trying to thrash their way into it at the same time. It just, like, I can picture that so well. Like that poor tree. Yeah, so that was
Yeah,
one of mine.
yeah, funny ones. I also liked revenge is a dish best served unexpectedly and from a distance, like a thrown trifle.
A thrown trifle. Yeah, that was one I loved also. I liked the one we talked about, like the radicalism about it's all about walking on the grass. Like I thought that was really,
Mhm.
it's like funny, but it's also like thematically very appropriate, which I think is
Yeah, and
good.
I liked Mosca's speech about what it means to be a radical as well.
Hmm.
Um, the heart of being a radical isn't knowing all the right books. It isn't about kings over the sea or the parliament over in the capital. It's looking at the world around you and seeing the things that make you sick to the stomach with anger. The things there's no point making a fuss about because that's just the way the world is and always was and always will be. And then it means getting good and angry about it anyway and kicking up a hurricane because nothing is writ across the sky to say the world must be this way. A tree can grow 200 years and look like it will last 1,000 more, but when the lightning strikes at last, it burns.
Hmm.
That was,
Yeah, that was a good speech. There was one, well, there's several that I didn't take a picture of, so it'll take me a minute. But it was when Mosca was confronting Beamabeth. She had some really good lines. Like I really
yeah.
appreciate how Mosca has absolutely zero patience for selfishness. Like even
Mhm.
though in like you'd kind of understand why she would be a little more prone to thinking of herself first because nobody she's for so long she didn't have anyone looking out for her, but she's still like when she sees that, she's like, that is unacceptable and I'm going to stop you. um okay, let me look for this one while you share your other quotes.
All right. I liked Clint's one about to be young is to be powerless, but to have delusions of power. To believe that one can really change things, make the world better and simpler in good and simple ways. To grow old is to realize that nobody is ever good, nothing is ever simple. The truth is cruel at first, but finally comforting. And I like that Mosca pushed back on that as well.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Okay, where is it? Oh, maybe it was one of the things that she said after it. I think it's well, one of the things I was trying to find is when she's talking to Clint afterwards, and he's like, "Why would you say all of that to her?" And she's like, "There are words I can swallow and words I can't, and these are ones I can't." Like, I really liked that. I'm still trying to find the thing she says to Beth, one of the ones that I really liked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I liked a short one I liked was Mr. Sleep's voice was still brisk, but it was the voice of a brisk but asthmatic vole.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, this is not the one I was trying to find. Who knows if I can find that, but this one's funny too. So, after Mosca says all this to her, one of the two of us thought Mosca is in a lot of trouble right now. I wonder which of us it is. She isn't turning pale or plucking at her handkerchief. Oh, Draggles, I think it's me. She's like, huh, I should probably run. Oh, I do like when Mosca says to her, um, you're nothing but a name. Without it, you would be nothing. All they love is your name. And
Yeah.
it's true. We see how fast they turn on her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think those are mine. Yeah, I have fewer than last time.
Hmm. I really liked the moment when Mosca gets outside the city walls, because I think the book does such a good job of like making it feel so claustrophobic for the reader too. Like they're stuck in this town, and like they can't even walk around when they want to, and all of this. And then when she's outside and she's just running around, and like her and Saracen are like cavorting in the meadow. I love that.
Yeah. I don't know if this was the one that you were looking for, but we have been risking gizzard and gullet for this precocious piece of perfidy and perniciousness.
That's a good one. Yeah, who knows the one I was trying to find? Maybe I read it already. I'm not good at marking quotes, and I need to I need to be better about that.
Okay. I don't think I have anything more to add about that. Did you want to say anything? Otherwise, just say that next month we'll be reading Verdrigris Deep, also known as Well Witched.
Yeah. It's a stupid title. Thankfully I got those copies overseas, so I have the good title, but
It
um
still had Flytrap though.
that's true. It's not like a um it's at least not like a title change, I guess. It was like a publication thing. I don't know actually if the reason they did it is because of the date that it was coming out in the US, like it had a different one. Who knows who makes these decisions? But yes, our next book will be Verdrigris Deep, and day and time to be determined. Trying to think if there's anything. Oh, also, this probably won't be a big deal, but I could not get the thumbnail to work for this live show, which has never happened to me before. So if you see the thumbnail change, hopefully it will later, then that's why. Um, and all of Hana's social media are linked in the description already. And you obviously know where my channel is because that's where we are. Um, yeah. Oh, Hana, do you want to plug your announcement that just went up?
Oh, we can. So I just today we announced a readathon that a couple of friends and I are hosting for Islamophobia Awareness Month, which is in November in the UK. Um, that's going to run for the whole of November, and there's lots of parts to it. But I think the post I put on my blog goes through all of them. So if that's interesting to anyone, or if anyone hasn't finalised their November TBR, then maybe think about joining us if you are interested.
Yeah,
We'd
and
love to have you.
I can actually, I think I can link that post directly as well, even though like it'll be the most recent one on your blog, but just to make it easier. Yeah, I think that was everything from us. I think we're good to go.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And
And from here on out, they're standalones. So like, feel free to. Although this one kind of was too. So like, feel free to drop in whenever. And yeah, we will see you for like mid-month in November. Yeah, Hana, do you want to do the final sign off?
I don't really have much to say, but
We
yeah,
could just
thank you for coming. Thanks for watching. Bye.
bye. And